Lobbyists are just as influential as ever, and while President Obama may have expressed some interest in reducing the impact of lobbyists, Congress clearly has not expressed that same interest and does not share that view. Lobbyists spend much more of their time on Capitol Hill than they do with the administration, and they're continuing to do so. And Congress continues to court lobbyists and particularly court their campaign dollars. So I don't think that we've seen any particular change. One thing that I think is worrisome is the president's rhetoric isn't meeting the reality. So I think Americans are going to be continually disappointed when they see that business in Washington hasn't changed, when the president says things like he did at the State of the Union, that they are changing the way business is done in Washington. So there will be a question of, should people believe what they're seeing, what their own eyes are telling them, or what the president is telling them? And I think that's a pretty big disconnect. Wishing that business was changed, the way business was done in Washington was changed, doesn't make it so. And that's pretty much where the president is at this point, wishing it would be so. He's certainly taken some actions that he believes will diminish the impact of lobbyists. But again, I don't think that most of those choices actually did change anything. The main thing was early in his administration when he banned lobbyists from speaking with his administration about Stimulus Act, Recovery Act money, for example. And what that was really doing, in effect, was just turning other people into lobbyists. If you say the lobbyists can't come to town and can't come to talk to your administration, what you do is you turn the corporate boards and presidents of companies and other such people into de facto lobbyists. And sometimes what you had was lobbyists, in fact, driving these people to meetings with administration officials, telling them what to say, giving them the questions, giving them directions in the building, and then picking them up and getting a briefing from them, because these were folks who weren't used to dealing with the administration and didn't know really how to go about it. And in fact, Crew worked with the American League of Lobbyists, as well as the ACLU, to change that rule because it seemed like an unreasonable one to us. Crew is in favor of more disclosure instead of banning anybody from speaking with the administration. We think a much better tactic would be for all meetings to be on the record. Let's have disclosure of not just meetings with lobbyists, but meetings with the corporate vice presidents. In fact, given that some of the administration had banned campaign donations by lobbyists during the campaign, but they hadn't banned, say, the donations by members, people who were executives in corporations, those people might in fact be viewed as more influential than their lobbyists. And clearly when the president of a major bank contacts the administration, that person's going to have way more influence than their lobbyist ever would. So I think the answer is clearly the influence hasn't changed. I know that the president is trying again with this banning lobbyists from corporate board, from these the trade advisory boards, I think of them as ITACs, and it's a question about what that will mean, how effective that will be, who will be those replacements on those boards, and we don't know the answer yet. You know, if you've again taken John Deere's lobbyist off, but you've put somebody else from John Deere on the board, have you really made a difference? I'd query, and I would say probably not. The thing that I think would really make a difference in Washington, because all of this talk about lobbyists is really tinkering around the edges, is campaign finance reform. Until we break the link between the money and legislation, or at least the perceived link between the two, although I would argue, of course, that it's much more than just a perception, you will always have people doubting that we're getting legislation based on the American people's best interests. It will always appear that it is based on politicians' need to increase their campaign coffers.